Jean-Baptiste Prévost, likewise a voyager, rendered frantic by famine, had been drowned in the Snake River. All parties had suffered the extremes of weariness, privation, and peril. They had traveled from St. Louis 3,500 miles. Let us now return to Mr. Astor. As yet, he had received no intelligence from the Columbia, and had to proceed upon the supposition that all had gone as he desired. He accordingly fitted out a fine ship, the Beaver, of 490 tons. Her cargo was assorted with a view of the supply of Astoria, the trade along the coast, and the wants of the Russian Fur Company. There embarked in her for the settlement a partner, 5 clerks, 15 American laborers, and 6 Canadian voyagers. Mr. Clark, the partner, was a native of the United States, although he passed much of his life in the Northwest, having been employed in the fur trade since the age of 16. The clerks were chiefly young American gentlemen of good connections. Mr. Astor had selected this reinforcement with the design of securing an ascendancy of American influence at Astoria and rendering the association decidedly national. This, from the peculiar circumstances of the case, he had been unable to do in the commencement of his undertaking. Captain Soule, the commander of the Beaver, was directed to touch at the Sandwich Islands to inquire about the fortunes of the Tonquin and to ascertain, if possible, whether the settlement had been effected at Astoria. If so, he was to enlist as many natives as possible and proceed. He was to use great caution in his approach to the mouth of the Columbia. If everything was found right, however, he was to land such part of his cargo as was intended for the post, and to sail for the new Archangel with the Russian supplies. Having received furs in payment, he would return to Astoria, take in the peltries there collected, and make the best of his way to Canton. These were to the strict letter of his instructions, a deviation from which was subsequently the cause of great embarrassment and loss, and contributed largely to the failure of the whole enterprise. The Beaver sailed on the 10th of October, 1811, and after taking in 12 natives at the Sandwich Islands, reached the mouth of the Columbia in safety on the 9th of May, 1812. Her arrival gave life and vigor to the establishment, and afforded means of extending the operations of the company and founding a number of interior trading posts. It now became necessary to send dispatches overland to Mr. Astor at New York. An attempt at so doing having been frustrated for some time by the hostility of the Indians at Wishrong. The task was confided to M. Robert Stewart, who, though he had never been crossed the mountains, had given evidence of his competency. for such undertakings. He was accompanied by Ben Jones and John Day, Kentuckians, Andre Valar and Francis Leclerc, Canadians, and two of the partners, Messrs. Llewellyn and Crooks, who were desirous of returning to the Atlantic states. This little party set out on the 29th of June, and Mr. Astor accompanies them in detail throughout the whole of their long and dangerous wayfaring. As might be expected, they encountered misfortunes still more terrible than those before experienced by Mr. Hunt and his associates. The chief features of the journey were the illnesses of Mr. Crooks and the loss of all the horses of the party and through the villainy of the Upsterokas. This latter circumstance was the cause of excessive trouble and great delay. On the 13th of April, however, the party arrived in fine health and spirits at St. Louis, having been 10 months in performing their perilous expedition. The route taken by Mr. Stewart coincided nearly with that of Mr. Hunt, as far as the Wind River Mountains. From this point, the former struck somewhat to the southeast, following the Nebraska to its junction with the Missouri. War having at length broken out between the United States and England, Mr. Astor perceived that the harbor of New York would be blockaded, and departure of the annual supply ship in the autumn prevented. In this emergency, he wrote to Captain Soley, the commander of the Beaver, addressing him at Canton. The letter directed him to proceed to the factory at the mouth of the Columbia with such articles as the establishment might need, and to remain there subject to the orders of Mr. Hunt. In the meantime, nothing had yet been heard from the settlement. Still not discouraged, Mr. A determined to send out another ship, although the risk of loss was so great and enhanced that no insurance could be effected. The Lark was chosen, remarkable for her fast sailing. She was put to sea on the 6th of March, 1813, under the command of Mr. Northrop, her mate. The officer first appointed to her command having shrunk from his engagement. Within a fortnight after her departure, Mr. A, receiving intelligence that the Northwest Company had presented a memorial to Great Britain, stating that the vast scope of the contemplated operations at Astoria, expressing a fear that unless crushed, the settlement would affect the downfall of her own fur trade, and advising that a force be sent against the colony. In consequence, the frigate Phoebe was ordered to convoy the armed ship Isaac Todd, belonging to the Northwest Company, and provided with men and munitions for the formation of a new establishment. They were directed to proceed together, quote, to the mouth of the Columbia, capture or destroy whatever American fortress they should find there, and plant the British flag on its ruins, unquote. Upon this matters being presented to our government, the frigate Adams, Captain Crane, was detailed for protection of Astoria, and Mr. A proceeded to fit out a ship called the Enterprise, to sail in company with the frigate and freighted with additional supplies. Just, however, as the two vessels were ready, a reinforcement of seamen was wanted for Lake Ontario, and the crew of the Adams were necessarily transferred to that service. Mr. A was about to send off his ship alone when the British force made its appearance off the Hook, and New York was effectually blockaded. The Enterprise, therefore, was unloaded and dismantled. We now return to the Beaver. This vessel, after leaving at Astoria that portion of her cargo destined for that post, sailed for New Archangel on the 4th of August, 1812. She arrived there on the 19th, leaving with no incidents of moment. A long time was now expended in negotiations with the drunk governor of the Russian fur colony, one Count Baranov, and when they were finally completed, the month of October had arrived. Moreover, in payment for his supplies, Mr. Hunt was to receive sealskins, and none were on the spot. It was necessary, therefore, to proceed to a seal-catching establishment belonging to the Russian company at the island of St. Paul, in the Sea of Kamskatka. He set sail for this place on the 4th of October after having wasted 45 days at New Archangel. He arrived on the 31st of the month, by which time, according to his arrangement, he should have been back at Astoria. Now occurred great delay in getting the pouches on board, every pack being overhauled to prevent imposition. To make matters worse, the Beaver, one night driven offshore in a gale, and could not get back until the 13th of November. Having at length taken in cargo and put to sea, Mr. Hunt was in some perplexity as to the course. The ship having been much injured in the late gale, he thought it imprudent to attempt making the mouth of the Columbia in this boisterous time of the year. Moreover, the season was already much advanced, and should he proceed to Astoria as originally intended, he might arrive at Canada so late as to find a bad market. Unfortunately, therefore, he determined to go at once to the Sandwich Islands, there await the arrival of the new annual ship from New York, take passage in her to the settlement, and let the Beaver proceed on her voyage to China. It is but justice to add that he was mainly induced to this course by the timid representations of Captain Soley. They reached Wohoo in safety, where the ship underwent the necessary repairs and again put to sea on the 1st of January, 1813, leaving Mr. Hunt on the island. At Canton, Captain Soley found the letter of Mr. Astor giving him information of the war and directing him to convey the intelligence to Astoria. He wrote a reply in which he declined complying with these orders, saying that he would wait for peace and then return home. In the meantime, Mr. Hunt waited in vain for the annual vessel. At length, about the 20th of June, the ship Albatross, Captain Smith, arrived from China, bringing the first news of the war to the Sandwich Islands. This ship Mr. H. chartered for $2,000 and to land him with some supplies at Astoria. He reached this post on the 20th of August, where he found the affairs of the company in perishing condition, and the partners being bent upon abandoning the settlement.